Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. As hundreds of tractors head for Westminster today and other parts of our once great country, I ask the question, can the farmers actually win? Can they get some big concessions out of this government? We look at prison plans to build more prisons, but are we getting sentencing right, given that just 10% of criminals now commit 50% of crime? And our panel tonight will be doing the GCHQ Christmas puzzle. We haven't told them that yet. They're terrified about looking stupid on screen. I guarantee you they will. But before all of that, let's get the news with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. The top story tonight. Well, after years of what prosecutors called horrific abuse, 3 members of Sarah Sharif's family have been found guilty over her death today. Her father, Irfan Sharif, and stepmother, Bainash Batul, were convicted of murder, while her uncle, Faisal Malik, was found guilty of allowing her death. Despite being known to social services since birth, the 10-year-old suffered unimaginable violence, including being beaten with a cricket bat and burned with boiling water. The convictions have sparked calls for urgent reform in child protection, with the Children's Commissioner warning of profound weaknesses in the system. Sentencing for the trio has been set for next Tuesday. Well, the Detective Chief Inspector of the case, Craig Emerson, said it has shocked and horrified people around the world.
Sarah's young life was brought to an end as a result of the brutal abuse and unspeakable violence inflicted on her by Sharif, Batul, which Malik did nothing to prevent.
Thousands of farmers have been driving tractors to Westminster today, demanding the government rethinks plans to impose an inheritance tax on farms worth over £1 million. Chancellor Rachel Reeves insists most farmers won't be affected, but critics say the changes threaten livelihoods, heritage and food security. Earlier, protesters held a minute's silence for farmers lost to stress and financial pressures. Calls for a pause and consultation are now growing louder, but Downing Street says the policy won't change.
This is the death of farming that's going to happen under this government. So we want to mark that, but once we get to Parliament, you give them what for. We're here to make a noise. This is a war, we will win, and the government will do a U-turn. That is determined by all of us to push that.
A neo-Nazi extremist's terror plot to intimidate migrants at a London law firm was thwarted thanks to the bravery of a receptionist. Cavan Medlock from Harrow appeared at Kingston Crown Court today after attempting to attack a solicitor in September 2020. Footage shows Medlock arriving with a 6-inch knife before being tackled in a violent struggle. Despite his threats, including admitting he was there to kill, Medlock was disarmed by the receptionist and detained by staff. He's due to be sentenced tomorrow. Police are investigating dozens of individuals at the post office and Fujitsu following the wrongful prosecution of hundreds of sub-postmasters. A team of 100 officers is reviewing 1.5 million documents related to the scandal as they consider charges including perjury and perverting the course of justice. So far, just 3 people have been questioned, with plans to interview many more in 2025. Commander Stephen Clayman, leading the investigation, has described the scale as unprecedented and stressed the investigation will take time. with trials possibly not happening until 2027. The Health Secretary has announced a permanent ban today on puberty blockers for children under the age of 18, pointing to safety concerns from independent experts. The ban applies to all UK prescriptions, including private ones, and will be reviewed in 2027. The move, though, has sparked criticism, with some calling it discriminatory. But Baroness Cass, who led a review into children's gender care, says the drugs are powerful with unproven benefits and significant risks. And FIFA's decision to award Saudi Arabia the 2034 World Cup has sparked backlash from politicians who have condemned it as sports washing. Despite significant concerns over human rights, including the treatment of migrant workers and LGBTQ+ fans, FIFA and the Football Association have given their support, following assurances from Saudi officials. Well, the move solidifies Saudi Arabia's ambitions to be a global sports leader, but critics, including Amnesty and Football Supporters Europe, have called today's decision scandalous. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in an hour.
Today the tractors came to Westminster, many, many hundreds of them, and they were really pretty noisy with their horns. They had pretty strong signs, you know, farmer, Starmer rather, the farmer harmer, and much else. And there were crowds of people there as well. And I have to say, it was noisy, but it was all very, very good-natured. Now, it wasn't just happening in Westminster, it was happening in other parts of the country too. I felt right from the start of this that if the Labour Party have roughly 100 members of Parliament for rural or semi-rural constituencies, and those margins by which they won are paper thin, which indeed they are, that maybe this campaign has a chance of winning, because if the farming community is able to galvanise properly, to get genuine public support behind it, and to go out repeatedly, peacefully, at least I think that, into market towns up and down the country where there are Labour MPs, I think concessions may well come, whatever the Prime Minister insists at PMQs today. So that's my debate this evening. Can the farmers win? Give me your thoughts on that, please. Farage at GBNews.com. I'm joined by Liz Webster, founder of Save British Farming, one of the organisers of today's protest, and Lloyd Russell-Moyle, former Labour MP, and Ranul Jawardena, former Environment Secretary. Liz, it was a big show today.
It was phenomenal, yeah. I feel very proud of the farming community and what we achieved today. And such a great feeling for farmers. Many were brought to tears. Just that feeling of camaraderie. We all work in isolation, so to all get together and express our feelings about the way we're being treated together has been absolutely uplifting, I think.
Now,
Emotional and uplifting.
Keir Starmer says there's nothing to worry about because nobody under £3 million of value is going to incur tax.
What you mean is, Nigel, Keir Starmer is continuing to insult our intelligence as farmers, but not only us, the accountants that work for us. Every farm has an accountant, and every accountant tells you what you're in for. And so Keir Starmer is insulting intelligent people across the country by lying.
Strong words. Now, there were protests today, I understand, in York, in Cardiff, I think. I'm not sure where else.
Felixstowe, yeah.
Felixstowe. But you take my point that for this to actually be effective, you've got to frighten those Labour MPs sitting in those constituencies with narrow majorities. Does the campaign have enough oomph to do that?
The whole idea of today was to tell farmers that we can do these carnivals and get attention, and they can be arranged pretty quickly, and they're actually good fun. As I said, they're good for our mental health. So we are encouraging farmers to collect, organise and go in all constituencies with Labour MPs, not just rural constituencies. I live in a rural area near Swindon. We will be doing a massive one in Swindon. We'll get all the local farmers together from neighbouring counties. There's 2 MPs in Swindon. We will hit Swindon and we'll get a lot of publicity, and those MPs will feel our heat.
And how long are you prepared to campaign on this for?
Look, Nigel, these farmers have been in farming for generations. Do you think they're going to give up in 5 minutes? No, this is the beginning, and it will ramp up. And I have promised farmers, and I've spoken to a lot of elderly farmers and it's really heartbreaking. Many farmers have worked very, very hard for very little, but always safe in the knowledge that the investment is in the farm. And this government are coming along and saying, we're going to steal your piggy bank. And not only your piggy bank, your children's future and your identity and everything else. So if somebody came and tried to steal what you've worked hard for, not just you, but your grandfathers and your forebearers, would you just say, yeah, come in and take it, come and steal that?
It's kind of the way of life more than the money, isn't it?
Yeah, it is our identity, but also our place in the country. And I think those voters, there's many, many voters, more British people understand that connection to the land, and they respect what we do and what we do for them. And when I spoke to one girl in London today, and she said to me, every time I fly into Britain, I feel such pride as I see the countryside and the greenery. So if we are forced off the land, Britain won't look like Britain. So this is what we're fighting for.
Well, no, it'll be bought up by American billionaires. Lloyd, this is, the argument that is being made by Liz here is actually one that's being heard all over the country. It's very, very emotional for people. And, when Starmer says it's 3 million, well, actually, it's not for most of them, is it? Do you think that maybe, just maybe, the Treasury have got their sums wrong on this?
Well, I think the Treasury have got their sums wrong, but slightly different to how you're presenting it. I don't think that many will end up paying this tax, but I think they'll pay an awful lot to accountants who will have to move money around in special ways, and it will make their lives more difficult. And in the end, the Treasury, I don't think, will gain much money from this. And I think and it will have caused a lot of bad will. I think the big problem with this is not that it is one particular measure, but it is after decades of farmers protesting under Conservative governments, protesting, saying that we've been badly done by... And it is so tone-deaf. I don't think that it is reversible, this particular policy. But what you might be able to do is put... immediately, everything is reversible in time, isn't it? But I do think that there should be pressure put to make sure that we address some of those other concerns the farming industry has had, to make sure that they are not continually being, being harmed. And I do think in the longer term, I don't think it's going to be this year, but in the longer term, a more nuanced inheritance tax scheme. That, for example, requires you to work the land. So if you own the land and then put it out into leaseholds, farmers, then you shouldn't get any tax rebate. But if you are the farmer that owns and works the land, the exemption would have been much fairer.
That's how we define a farmer, isn't it, I guess?
We do, but you should be thinking about food security here and food production, because it is a fact that we need food production to ensure that inflation doesn't go out of control, and also that we don't play into the hands of our enemies.
But the reason
you should be thinking about continual food production.
I totally agree. But the reason we're needing to do this is because swathes of land are being bought up, not really to farm them, not really to invest in them as farms, but
you're enabling that, I'm afraid, by forcing closure and sell. And one of your MPs...
Lloyd does have a point here. Lloyd does have a point here. That actually there have been a lot of very wealthy people buying vast tracts of farmland. The problem with this policy is even more of them. And there'll be giant American corporations. Ranul, tell you what interests me about this? We're having this debate, and it's a pretty furious debate. And it's a very, genuinely, people I spoke to today when I was there, they really feel that everything about themselves and their family and their history and their kids is under attack. There's no question about that. Here's the mystery. These tax changes affect other family businesses too, whether it's a small engineering factory or whatever it may be. I spoke to somebody in Essex the other day. Since 1860, they've had this particular little factory, specialist factory in the family, but nobody seems to be speaking up for small business. It's as if they're being ignored completely. Why?
Well, I think there are two things here. First, on the farmers, I think part of the fury is that people feel they were lied to because Labour said before the election, we're not going to bring these tax changes in, contrary to rumours, and then they did exactly what they said they weren't going to do, and that's why I think people are so furious about it. And I think the broader issue around business, I think over the last 30, 40 years, businesses have not wanted to comment on politics full stop. I sense that this is the beginning of a change, where businesses of all shapes and sizes, small family businesses to bigger corporates, now are rediscovering their voice because they're seeing the impact of tax changes and the wider economy on their businesses, whether it's a retail business who is disproportionately affected by NI changes, through to, as you say, small family businesses affected by inheritance tax. I think people are rediscovering their voice, and I think that's a very good thing.
Well, actually, in a democracy, that's a good, healthy thing.
Exactly.
Final thought on this, and it's an important one. I made, in my earlier comments, the point that it was good-natured, noisy, legal, permissions had been granted, everything was done beautifully. It wasn't a flash mob that closed down the streets. I didn't see any muck spreaders in tow going down Whitehall, but a lot of people in the crowd said to me today, Nigel, do you think we should be more like the French? Put up blockades, create mess. And I don't know how you feel about this, Liz, how militant this lobby needs to get, but I don't know. I think the way you're doing it at the moment is right. Or do you think there are elements of the farming community that are going to take this further?
I don't think we need to be like the French, to be fair.
Thank goodness.
And we're not like the French. And we had a great time speaking to a lot of the police who actually thanked us for doing what we're doing. And that made us feel very warm and comfortable in that zone, because what we're looking to do is to campaign to get support. We don't want to lose those feelings of voting. So that's why taking tractors into towns and cities, instead of doing it in a rural area, it's not, you're not excited to see a tractor in a rural town, but in a city or a metropolitan place you are. And that is going to be our strategy, that we just bring a carnival and we say, and the children wave at us and they enjoy that. And there's been lots of farming programmes as well, which have helped to boost those images.
Not least of all Jeremy Clarkson, to be fair. No, but to be fair, whether you like him or not.
I really admire Jeremy's farming programme because he's taken farming to people's living rooms and explained the problems very, very well. So we will continue to do that, and I don't think we need to do any more than that.
And we will continue to cover this on this show.
Thank
you for coming in. Now, I'm doing a Farage at Large next Thursday, the 19th of December. It's going to be at the County Showground, the Kent County Showground in Maidstone. I advertised it a few days ago. Now, normally, we limit these events to 150 to 200 people, but already over 300 of you have booked tickets to come. But I can tell you, it's a big venue. We can take another 100 people. So if you want to come, live, Farage at Large, live television, what could go wrong? Maidstone, next week, go to the QR code on our screen now or gbnews.com. In a moment, we talk prisons. We talk about the Labour government's determination to build more prisons, but I also want to talk about sentencing. What do we do if 50% of crime is committed by 10% of convicted criminals? Is it time to really think about putting people away and chucking away the key?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
But it turns out there's a growing number of grandparents who are now taking up the hobby.
And not all of them are male. 7 million gamers are aged over 50, 7 million of them. And we're going to introduce you to one this morning. Her name's Kath Bowie. She's 76 years of age, and Kath has become a worldwide star of the game Fortnite. Good to see you, Kath.
Hello, good morning to both of you.
Morning.
And tell me this, Kath, is Bowie your real name?
Bowie. Bowie. Yeah, it is my real name, yes.
And you do it a Bowie and not a Bowie?
It's a Bowie, yes, definitely Bowie, yes.
Bowie or Bowie?
Bowie.
Bowie.
But that's not what the Jim Bowie was called, or Jim Bowie was called in the Alamo. He was a Bowie.
No, but No, but that's what I'm called, Kath Bowie.
Oh,
She's their own superstar.
You are your own superstar. You are indeed. Well, so we're led to believe, Kath, that there's nobody else like you, or very few people like you, but there is. There is lots of people your age, your stage, doing what you do.
Yes, there's not a lot that streams. Okay, Fortnite, but there's definitely plenty that plays. Any game, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be Fortnite. It can be any game.
So Kath, how did you get started in all of this?
Oh, yeah, well, it's 7 years ago, actually. I walked into my teenage grandson's bedroom and just saw him playing what I now know, of course, what I play is Fortnite. And that was the very first week that Epic had released it. And it was just really love at first sight.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some of your reactions to my question, can the farmers win? David says, I challenge all Labour MPs to try 2 weeks on the gruelling duties on a farm, and Starmer just 2 days. John says, I totally support the farmers, but I do think if they want to change this awful government's policy, then it's time to take off the gloves and start bringing the country to a standstill. Well, there we are. That is the French approach, and it is supported by some. I just think if the farming population do that, somehow they'll lose the support of the silent majority. I could be wrong. Let's talk prison plans. Let's have a look at what the Lord Chancellor, Shabam Mahmood, had to say on building super prisons.
Our strategy makes clear, even with a record spend in the next year on prison building, even with the delivery of the full 14,000, which we are committed to, we are still going to run out, because we published for the first time the supply line, which shows new prisons and new prison places coming on stream, but also the demand line, which is the demand for prison places. And it clearly shows that we are going to fall short, and we simply cannot build fast enough or build our way out of this problem.
Now, when Labour criticised the former Conservative government for not building enough prisons, they're right, and the Conservatives admit that themselves. This plan is for 4 super prisons. And what a mess this whole thing is, with we're letting offenders out early, the reoffence rates are horrendous. But the thing that really interests me is this report that shows that just 10% of people who come in and out of prison are committing 50% of the crime. Maybe that's where we should put the super prisons and put all those people in there, perhaps almost forever. I don't know. Let's ask Val Warosh, former prison officer, who now works for the charity organisation Tempus Novo. And I know you're supporting prisoners getting back into work and all of those things. And look, that's admirable and it's right. And we should, in a society, seek, to begin with at least, to rehabilitate people who've gone off the rails. I absolutely accept that, and I totally believe in a spirit of Christian forgiveness. But isn't the problem, Val, that you've got these people who literally spend their lives going in and out of prison and, frankly, are unreformable?
It is. Can I firstly say, Nigel, it's an honour to be interviewed by possibly the future Prime Minister of this country.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. But let's get back to the subject.
Yes. There is an alternative, like we've said. And the reason they keep going back, Nigel, is because there's no employers will take them on. They cannot get a job for love nor money. That's the reason the other 50% that you mentioned, those people would stay out of prison if they could get employment. That's the reason we set Tempus Novo up. We've run for 10 years. We've placed 1,205 people to date into work. Only 37 of that 1,205 people have returned to custody within 2 years. Those are facts from the CNOMIS system, the prison system itself. If the government are going to build this prison at 300 million, the alternative to that is it holds 1,700 prisoners. We could place 1,700 prisoners into work and keep them out of prison for £5.1 million. There's not just about the building the prison. It costs then a further 87.5 million annually to run that prison.
You make a very strong argument. And yes, difficult for offenders to get jobs. Some, of course, leave prison with no address, and then getting a job becomes even harder. And I do understand all of that, and I genuinely admire the work you do. But just back to my earlier point, there are some people who don't want to work. There are some people who opt for a criminal lifestyle. Should we not be putting those people away for much, much longer, frankly, to protect the rest of us?
For sure. I totally agree with that. I'm not soft on crime at all. I worked in prisons for 30 years. Yeah. I've rolled round up floor and fought with many of them. And there are some people, unfortunately, that no matter what you do for them, they're always going to go down that road. And I totally agree. There are people who need to stay in prison for longer periods, or for life even. But 50 to 60% of them need help. And it's mainly a job. And I know I keep prattling on about this, but it's what's missing.
That you've given us, I think, some very inspiring words there, very interesting words, some great statistics, and I want to commend you and congratulate you on what you do. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the show. He was actually quite inspiring in a way, wasn't he?
Well, due to a slight technical issue, I wasn't able to hear everything that he was saying.
What he was making was several hundred of people that Tempus Novo got into work and a re-offence rate of about 1% to 2%. It was actually quite inspiring.
Well, as you said, the notion of Christian forgiveness is so important, and I think that's the sort of country that we are. We want people to learn from their past and improve themselves for the future. I think the Book of Common Prayer refers to it as turning from their wickedness and living. And
it's like being on with Jacob, isn't it?
Well, of course, he's still a follower of Rome, but the point is that we want people to turn from their past if they've erred. However, the truth is there are people who simply don't want to. People who seek to follow that life that's a life of crime. And we, I think, in government, whoever is in government, have a duty to protect law-abiding citizens from those threats.
And that's the point, isn't it, Lloyd, really, that, number one, with young, first-time offenders, you really want to do all you can to get them back to a good life and not hurting everybody else. But, boy, the Labour government have got a massive problem with this, haven't they? Well, I mean, they've inherited a massive problem.
The Labour government have inherited a massive problem. And part of the other problem that we have is that we have too many general population prisons. So those 10% of people that you talk about are suddenly mixed. Sometimes even in a cell, you have a newbie put in with an age-old person. I know some people might say that it sounds like it's more luxury, but I think that we should ban mixed cells. I think we should have single cells. I think it's just a recipe for passing on bad behaviour. I think we should be much clearer that if you're on short to medium sentences or your first time, you never mix with people who are career criminals.
Now, the remand system's a big problem with this, isn't it?
I think you do those things, and actually what you will do is drive down reoffending. And then, as we heard, and you've explained in the clip, actually what you need to do is a proper wraparound service. I don't mind people being released earlier if I had confidence in the probation service, making sure people would be placed automatically in a job. To some extent, you shouldn't be able to leave prison until a job has been arranged for you, even if it's a rather menial job, until a proper home has been arranged.
This point, Lloyd, is interesting.
That would also
because we are releasing people who have no address to go to.
Yeah.
And that almost guarantees them getting back into crime.
Yes, I mean, I do take that point. It does encourage people to do what they know. which may well be crime. I think clearly, whilst they're in prison, it's really important they're given skills so they have the opportunity also to learn a new trade or whatever. But I do just take issue with one point around the conditions in prison. You know, I do think there is a view, a widely held view in this country that our prisons are actually very, civil places to be on the whole.
Cushy.
And
Colour TVs.
And you know, they don't any longer send that deterrent effect that I think is important also.
But I think you can create single cells that are not pleasant, not luxurious.
Well, isn't it more important that we're matching prisoners up by, for example, whether they were the first-time offender or not?
I just think actually also having a bunk bed situation where you've got a roommate that you can lark around with. I know people think it's an imposition. I actually think it's just a recipe
so you're a
for
fan of solitary
disaster.
confinement?
I think people should be sleeping on their own, and then there should be activities that they have to take part in the day. And at the moment, they're in their cell for large amounts of time with just two of them, messing around, doing absolutely nothing useful.
And particularly in the remand system.
As soon as 9 o'clock hits, they should be out doing something.
In the remand system, you get pretty serious criminals with pretty minor criminals, and in that situation,
but this is matching
works.
people up. So, you know, those people who are first-time offenders, those people who we really ought to be investing our time and resources in to retrain, to give them a better future, those are the people who I actually don't think it's a problem if they do share a cell, because they're actually, we want to create a sense that there is a shared endeavour.
Yes, but out of that population, there will always be some that are on the reoffending pathway, and if you match them up, you've doubled the number that are on the reoffending pathway.
I'll tell you what, there are no perfect answers, and it's going to be an interesting one, but one thing for certain is that the release of 3,000 prisoners that we've seen since Labour have come to power has seen reoffending rates that have really offended a lot of people. Now, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we are hearing from church ministers across the country. Each day, they have a special message for you to celebrate the festive season.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 11.
Hi, I'm Chris Tufnell. I'm the vicar of Uterbridge Parish Church near Sheffield. Do you know the story of the Christmas Day Truce 1914? It's very well known. British and German soldiers of the First World War climbed out of their trenches and began to exchange gifts of chocolates and cigarettes, even playing a game of football. It's well known, and rightly so, because what a beautiful thing it is for peace to be brought into a place of conflict and war. Of course, that was supposed to be the war to end all wars. That's what they called it, but we all know it wasn't. Human history is littered with conflict. And conflict isn't just something that happens between nations. It happens between colleagues, neighbours, friends and family members. It can even happen within us. At Christmas, we remember that Jesus came into the world to bring peace. Peace between humans, but also peace between humanity and God. In a sense, the birth of Jesus was the original Christmas Day truce. The invitation is for us to climb out of our trenches and enjoy with him the peace he offers. Happy Christmas.
Well, that was beautifully done, and that story of the Christmas truce of 1914, it really is an amazing story. If your grandchildren and children don't know it, make sure you tell it to them. In a minute, we discuss carbon capture. Huge amounts of public money going into it. Will it ever actually work?
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. The next 24 hours will be rather gloomy for most of us, with a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, some patchy drizzle too, but clear and frosty for some, most notably those areas that have seen sunshine during the last 24 hours. Scotland, mostly central and northern parts of mainland Scotland, where we'll see clear spells continuing overnight. Frost widely forming under those clear skies and some patches of fog. But eastern Scotland and the far north and west, mostly cloudy. Likewise for Northern Ireland, England and Wales. And in fact, across the east of England, increasingly low cloud will lead to a gloomy start to Thursday, with largely drizzly rain starting to move in from the North Sea, and that will reach parts of the Midlands by dawn, and it's going to be dreary and damp in these areas. Southwest England, similar conditions, but for the west and north of Wales, perhaps some brightness coming through. Likewise for the far north of Northern Ireland, but otherwise Northern Ireland's mostly cloudy. The cloud beginning to spill into southern Scotland as well, but elsewhere across Scotland where we do have the clear skies overnight, it's going to be a chilly start to the day, and in some spots once again temperatures will struggle above 0 throughout daylight hours. Some patchy fog persisting in places as well, but the gloomiest skies, I suspect, by now will be across much of England into East Wales as well, with outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. 8 to 10 Celsius in the south, a little milder compared with the recent days, but staying cold for parts of Scotland. Now, by Friday morning, the low cloud in the south and east will be spilling its way into southern Scotland as well as western Scotland and parts of Northern Ireland. So for most of the UK, Friday is a cloudy day. There'll be outbreaks of rain and drizzle as well. But into the weekend, those outbreaks of rain will start to sink south and introduce milder air across the board.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
The Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, they're at it again, aren't they? EU European Affairs Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds suggesting that maybe we will rejoin the Youth Mobility Scheme, which, of course, is how free movement starts all over again. And we know what happens. More from the EU come here than here, go to the EU. And it's just classic Lloyd, isn't it? It's a Brexit betrayal.
This is complete rubbish, I'm afraid,
really,
Nigel.
Really?
We have youth mobility schemes with Japan, we have it with Canada, we have it with Australia, and we should have it with other liberal Western countries around the world, and it allows people to come for a few years, not to stay and remain, not an automatic...
How do we guarantee that?
Well, Erasmus, for example, which is the proposed scheme, already includes some countries that have a visa arrangement with the EU and that are not in the Schengen area. So you just say, like you do already with some of your other Erasmus countries that you don't have free movement of, we want that part of the Erasmus programme, we don't want the Erasmus programme.
Well, that's all well and
my
good.
understanding is, and I went to some of the EU mission the other day here in London, we were chatting about it, and I think they are ready to give that in as a decent concession, because you claim that more people come here than we go there, but that is a net export for us because they come with their dollars and with their euros and spend it and they help our economy.
And they stay forever.
They don't stay,
and the population
they're on
explodes.
a limited visa. They've got it just like a tourist visa. They have to go home.
Not much point asking a former minister of the last government about immigration numbers, really. But I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? It all sounds, everything you've just said sounds terrific, but does it work out like that?
Absolutely not. And in fairness, I think you'd agree, we held out on this too. You know, there was the offer from the EU that we should accept youth mobility scheme. We said no. I think the big difference, actually, if I may, is that Japan, Australia, Canada, they're all countries with a broadly similar per capita GDP. And the difference is the EU has countries of vastly different per capita GDP, which is a huge pull factor to the UK. And that's why an EU-wide deal is not possible. I actually would concede that a bilateral agreement with a particular country, say Germany or France, might be something we should be open to.
If you're roughly on similar economic levels. No, I get that point. Now, carbon capture. Carbon capture. Here was the Prime Minister at PMQs today on carbon capture. He seems very proud of the concept.
I was proud to see the work on the carbon capture cluster in Teesside, which will create 2,000 new jobs.
So we're chucking £22 billion of your taxpayers' money into a huge carbon capture project which will create green jobs. Well, that's what we're told. But when you look at Canada, you look at America and elsewhere around the world, you realise that no carbon capture scheme as yet has ever actually worked in any way at all. And I've been hearing about carbon capture for over a quarter of a century. And I really, really worry that this is £22 billion of money being spent ideologically with absolutely no evidence that it's going to work.
You and me are normally on complete opposite sides on the climate change argument. But I actually almost agree with every single word that you have said.
Like, get rid of him off the panel. We can't have him back.
Because I'm afraid carbon capture, to me, was the kind of way that the Tories were pushing the climate change argument, which is, don't worry, we can keep doing what we're doing and we'll just find a clever little trick to capture all this carbon in the sky and pump it down. It's not worked in scale anywhere. Now, it might be useful for some transitional industries, some specialist areas, but the real heavy lifting needs to be in proper renewables, proper nuclear rollout, proper battery storage in homes, and then industries that are built around nuclear power stations. That's the pathway that we need to do, and we're not yet there.
And I'm told that battery storage is improving, but we're still not there by a long shot.
We are very close there for domestic purposes, but we are nowhere near there for commercial purposes.
No, that's right. Well, who better to ask than the former Environment Secretary? I'm sure you're wildly enthusiastic about this carbon capture scheme.
I think it has an important role to play.
Oh, here we go.
Look, I mean, the problem is there are some on the left who basically want us to stop doing everything that we're doing. You know, I saw someone on the BBC, I forget their exact role, but they basically want us to stop flying. They want us to stop eating meat and so on. That's the view of the left, which is we should get...
The hard left.
Yeah, the hard left, which is we should get to net zero by ultimately going to zero and not doing anything that we enjoy. This, I think, has a role to play if the technology can be proven.
But that's my point, rather.
And I accept that.
It's not.
And I accept that. But you've got to innovate. And, look, I'm willing to give Ed Miliband, on this occasion, and perhaps on this occasion only, the benefit of the doubt.
Would you explain, please look at the camera, would you explain to our viewers why £22 billion of that, a lot of money, given that they've had their winter fuel payments taken away in many cases, given with the farmers, I mean, there we're talking about... in relative terms, tiny sums of money. This is a huge amount of money, and it's not much more than a punt.
Well, I've not looked at the detail of this proposal, but this money is all, I'm sure, is not all going out the door today. The truth...
What rather like HS2, we'll just keep pumping money
The truth is, some of those other decisions are ghastly decisions that this government didn't need to take. The idea of taking the winter fuel allowance away from pensioners when they're giving huge pay rises to train drivers, that was a separate decision they made. It's unrelated to this. The point here is we've got to be pragmatic. It means that we're not going to ultimately pollute nothing into the environment. It's about finding the best way to do what we want to do, to grow the economy, to develop new battery technology and so on.
We're using a technology that other countries have tried to prove and have failed. And surely better for us to pioneer proper wave or tidal technology, which we would be a leader on. Others haven't even tried, and so that we can then make the financial gains from when we can sell it around the world.
But that will require a huge amount as well, and I'm not in favour of that.
It would require huge amounts, but you would be generating stuff and energy that's useful rather than just shoving stuff in the ground.
But if you're clever, what you do is get partnerships with private money and private companies. That's the clever way of doing it.
And you get there before the rest other countries have tried it out, so then you can sell it.
Well, I have to say, we need to take a break. I can't go on agreeing with Lloyd on anything. It's actually rather distressing. But I'm going to get him back because, folks, GCHQ have released their Christmas puzzle. And after the break, our panel are going to have a go. They've had a sneak preview. I tell you what, they haven't got a clue. See you in a minute.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Our next guest has a rather unique career story. She was working at a pub aged 18 and Holly Farmer was spotted by a modelling scout and it turned out to be her lucky day.
Scott Yoz-Clark sent this message to Holly.
Holly, 18, 5'10", she does not belong in a pub. And I absolutely love that, Holly, because it's a bit like Dirty Dancing, where it's like, you can't put baby in the corner. Holly does not belong in a pub. You belong on the catwalk. What was that moment like for you when you were scouted by Yoz?
It was crazy. I have to say I wasn't expecting it, to be honest. Like, I was just on my lunch break. I was working at a pub, so... I was on my lunch break walking, going to Primark and...
You're going to Primark?
Got stopped by yours.
How did that interaction go?
Well, first question was, how tall are you? So, 5'10".
Very much that.
Yeah. Then he gave me his card and asked, explained everything. That he's a model scout, obviously.
Yeah, because generally when I scout, especially when I get close to that person, I tend to look in their eyes. And when you see something there, it's like everything works on the face, and then the eyes gives you away.
Well, you've spotted a gem in Holly. I mean, you can tell even when you walked in, you are built to be a model.
I did my first fashion week here in London and then went to Paris, and it was really fun.
Wow.
Now it's my full-time job. It's a bit crazy, to be honest, to me, to be able to say that modelling is my full-time job now. Some brands will ask you to be a bit more serious, and then others not.
So it depends on the client's request as well. Ellie, give us your best model face, ready? 3, I wonder if we can come back. 3, 2, 1. Very nice.
High fashion. Yeah. But you guys do all contorted moves, don't you?
Yeah.
All this high fashion. Do yours?
I'm just permanently living in model
You actually
model
are,
world.
though. He actually
this
does.
Is it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So the boffins at GCHQ have come up with a Christmas puzzle. Well, I'm very lucky this evening to have a panel of extreme intellect, all of whom I'm sure can walk straight into major intelligence roles in this country without any difficulty at all. And I've got Jacob here as a backup sub in case they're in terrible trouble. So let's put up the first quiz question. And it is, what does this say? And we have this series of images. And what do you see there, Lloyd?
I think that one is Buckingham Palace.
I don't believe it. You must have cheated. But he's right. Goodness gracious me. Well, I tell you what, that was extraordinary. Well done, you. We always knew Lloyd was clever. I mean, terribly wrong on most things, but clever. Right, now let's have a go at B. B, put it up on the screen, please. What are you left with once you've removed the award carrier, character programme, route and safety guide? So let's have a go at this. The first one says black brick badge. Randall?
So I've got this one, I think, by deduction.
Yep.
So I started with blue Peter badge.
Yes.
Brown paper bag.
Yes.
Green crosscode. Yellow brick road. Red Riding Hood.
Yeah.
And then, by deduction, Pink Panther show, because Blackpool Tower must be the answer.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, you've done pretty bloomin' well. Wow. You've done pretty bloomin' well. Are you impressed by that?
Well, that one I found really easy. But I cheated when I looked at it in the paper this morning. We knew we were looking for a landmark. You look at it very quickly, it's Blackpool Tower. That seemed to me to be...
Are we meant to be looking for landmark? It doesn't say that on our sheet.
That's right.
You had a help.
Yeah,
Larry Nail told me we were looking for landmark. So
the remaining three words are Blackpool Tower. That is absolutely right. Well, that is absolutely brilliant, I must say. Right, now, let us put up the last one. These chaps have made... God, they're so blooming clever. Extraordinary. Let's put up the last one. Complete the sequences. 3, 2. What comes next, guy?
No.
Yeah. And then
number 1 in French, of course.
The Roman numerals 4.
Roman numerals. The next one is that was easy peasy. That was easy peasy. Let's go for the third one. 2D-IM.
It's ER.
I think it's, yes, it's do-re-mi, isn't it?
It certainly is. Very, very good. We're doing well here, I've got to tell you. Right, so let's have this one a little bit harder. QGRH.
Well, QRSGHI.
The answer?
So it's SI.
SI is right.
Yes. Next one is
Explain
TY.
why, Jacob.
Well, because the Q becomes R, and then the next in sequence is S, the G becomes H, the next in sequence is I.
There you are. Let's try the next one, shall we?
TY.
TY is correct. Let's try the next one, guys.
Of.
Yes.
I got that one.
Rattling through this. My goodness gracious me. OK, let's try the next one.
Yes.
This isn't very good radio, is it?
No. For those of you listening on the
please do not
readjust your sets. If you're in your tractor driving back to your farm.
We're not like WhatsApp that's gone down today and all these other things. We are still.
So we're stuck on this one,
So,
chaps.
so we'll by deduction. So if we pass that for a minute, the next one must be BR, Great Britain.
Britain,
Yes.
absolutely, yes.
And
BRI.
knowledge, right?
Completes the sequence of knowledge, yes.
So then we just...
So it's
what are we
the
looking at?
University of something
Bridge. Cambridge?
Cambridge.
It's the University of Cambridge, that is right. And the one you've missed out on is CAM, which is Old MacDonald's backwards.
Ah, yes.
How about that?
Very
Bit tricky,
good.
bit
Oh,
tricky,
that's
bit tricky.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
I have to say, I'll be honest with you, I thought this mob would be hopeless. But you've excelled yourselves. OK, they had a few minutes to look at it, but there was no cheating of any kind at all, and I reckon that is particularly impressive. Jacob, what do you have coming up tonight on State of the Nation?
Well, something you should be worried about in Parliament, the metrology bill, which is going to allow a minister simply to say that we will follow EU regulations right back to the 1972 European Communities Act that brought in all the EU law. It's not to follow anybody else's regulations, only Europe's, under purely ministerial control, no proper parliamentary process to check it. Labour is pretending it's happy with the Brexit referendum, but it is subtly, surreptitiously, quietly easing us back in to the EU and to the control of the EU.
Fair point.
I think that...
it sounds like... Well, there you are.
I always
Enough
said it was more democratic when we were in the EU and leaving the EU. The likelihood is that we would have ministers making decrees and we would have less say over our future.
I find that that's a pretty weaselly answer. I'm really sorry. Randall, of course, it's all your fault because most things are. But if you in government had taken us away from thousands of EU laws, and indeed, I think I'm right in saying that this is something. I know Jacob was very keen on 4,000 particular laws being removed, and yet it didn't really happen, and that maybe Kemi Badenoch was involved in all of that.
Well, look, when Jacob and I were in government, the plan was to do exactly that. But the point here is there is no compulsion on the new government, this Labour government, to take this piece of law forward. They're choosing to do that.
Yes.
So regardless what we might or might not have done in the past, and we had a clear view, Jacob and I, the truth here is that the Labour government are choosing alignment. It's a choice
But
they're
had we
making.
moved further away, it'd be more difficult.
Nigel is infuriatingly right on this, that we had a bill before Parliament that was going to take every EU law out of our system by the end of 2023. And when Rishi Sunak came in, his government, the government he led, bottled it.
But there is
and that
no
was
requirement on Labour to do
abject failure.
Kemi Badenoch was the minister in charge.
Our
Is that
leader
correct?
our leader is a great leader and has my full support.
And there was no
Wonderful lady.
requirement on Labour
yes?
to do this.
You
Damning
see,
praise.
this is the trouble
Damning
with the
praise.
established political class. You ask them a straight question and you don't get a straight... Folks, it was Kemi Badenoch, you see, and that's the problem with Kemi, that she sounds all tough on so many things, and yet when you scratch beneath the surface, you find that she's not.
The reason I hate it, of course she was the minister in charge, but these decisions are made by the Prime Minister. In reality, this was too big a decision. And when Boris was Prime Minister and Liz, They were great guns going for what I was trying to do. Everyone recognised it was difficult and that there would be squeals of opposition and that the civil service will say, well, you may forget some obscure law.
Did the Prime Minister ask her to call for open borders as well? I mean, very powerful overcoming, wasn't he? Because he's had a record of calling for doing things that have harmed this country.
The Prime Minister makes the big decisions, unquestionably. And certainly on retained EU law, it was more Rishi Sunak than Kevin. She could have resigned.
It was odd today, Jacob. She chose to attack the Prime Minister in PMQs on immigration numbers.
Well, they're in charge now, but yeah, our record on immigration was awful, as you've pointed out.
I was really surprised that with the Shires coming up to London and with up to 100 now Labour MPs in rural seats, she didn't go on agriculture.
On agriculture, and you were at the protest earlier today, and the farmers are being treated appallingly, but it's so much broader than the farmers. Every business in this country is being hammered by this.
We've been discussing this.
And that's just, it's an attack on property. Socialists don't like private property. They're trying to destroy it. And what they ignore is that they will destroy the economy and jobs at the same point.
What I'd like to see, Jacob, and I made this point around on earlier, we need the voice of small business, small manufacturers, retailers, whatever they may be. We're not hearing enough from them, are we?
No, we're not. And this may be what gets them to speak, because we hear a lot from the CBI, which is the voice of the establishment, is always in bed with the government of the day. They go,
well, we need better voices on behalf of small business. I'm done. It's over. I'm back tomorrow. Let's see what Aidan McGivern has got for us on the weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. The next 24 hours will be rather gloomy for most of us, with a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, some patchy drizzle too, but clear and frosty for some, most notably those areas that have seen sunshine during the last 24 hours. Scotland, mostly central and northern parts of mainland Scotland, where we'll see clear spells continuing overnight. Frost widely forming under those clear skies and some patches of fog. But eastern Scotland and the far north and west, mostly cloudy. Likewise for Northern Ireland, England and Wales. And in fact, across the east of England, increasingly low cloud will lead to a gloomy start to Thursday, with largely drizzly rain starting to move in from the North Sea, and that will reach parts of the Midlands by dawn, and it's going to be dreary and damp in these areas. Southwest England, similar conditions, but for the west and north of Wales, perhaps some brightness coming through.